This is the DallasCowboys.com Draft Show. Your war room for insider news and draft analysis from deep within the confines of Cowboys headquarters at the Star in Frisco.
The Dallas Cowboys select T.D. Lamb, wide receiver.
And now, your hosts, Dane Brugler, Jeff Kavanaugh, Kevin Turner, and Kyle Yeomans.
There are 127 days until the NFL draft, April 29th of 2021. We are on the last episode of 2020, though. Actually, I take that back. We've got one more, I guess, next week. But the last one with these two guys, Jeff Kavanaugh and Dane Brugler. I'm Kyle Yeomans here on the DallasCowboys.com Draft Show. Welcome in, everybody. Glad you're with us. We're going to hit a ton of names today because, you know, it's the holiday season, and we're going to gift a ton of names off of the list of Dane Brugler and Jeff Kavanaugh here over the next 45 minutes. No KT today. He is out at the moment, but we wish KT the best, and we'll have him back on once the new year turns. But I want to address something really quickly right off the top of this show, and we're going to talk about the number one overall pick. We're going to talk about the Cowboys, but the Cowboys got to win. On Sunday, they defeated the San Francisco 49ers 41-33, and Jeff is pumping his fist, but he also on our little WebEx call said RIP to Captain Trade Down. Jeff, is Captain Trade Down dead at the moment? Is he done because of this Cowboys win?
Well, dead is a very extreme term, but I guess I did put RIP.
You did, so.
Team Tank threw a tread, so it's kind of stuck and doing circles. And Captain Trade Down has been unseated from the horse. He couldn't hold on for the 8 seconds, and he broke a leg. So, yeah, we're in a tough spot. We're currently, I'm going to have to get a new shirt. You see, I got the Captain Trade Down shirt here.
It looks good,
Captain Trade Down. But, yeah, thank you. I'm going to have to get a Captain Stick and Pick shirt, I guess. I'm going to have to do something different. Captain Trade Down's in peril. We're in peril right now.
He's in a little bit of trouble. And Dane, I know you had talked about earlier in one of the previous shows that we had that you were okay with trading down. Are you on Stick and Pick's right hand side this time? Or are you rolling with still with Captain Trade Down as the Cowboys currently sit ninth?
Yeah, and well, last week they were with that Chargers win. It felt like the Cowboys were in a position of power at that number 4 pick. A good spot for a trade back, quarterback, a needy team moving up there. Now sitting at 8, I still think they're in a position to trade back. You look at some of the teams that are directly behind them. There's still going to be some teams looking for a quarterback, whether that's the 49ers, could be the Broncos, could be the Lions, the Patriots, the Bears. So this is still a position where good chance at least one of those quarterbacks, Trey Lance, Justin Fields, Zach Wilson, whoever ends up being there, could be a possible trade partner where they can move back to the mid-teens. And I still like their options. They could go corner. They could go J.C. Horn. They could go tackle with Rashaan Slater. So I don't think the trade back option is dead. And I think that it brings up a new, different scenario with the players that you're moving back to get. And I'd still do it if it means I'm getting an extra 2 or multiple draft picks that I can use towards just building up this roster.
See, Jeff, Dane is right there. I mean, he's helping Captain Trade Down get right back up on the horse. He's sitting here pushing.
No, we appreciate it. Look, Captain Trade Down and I appreciate it, even though we're the same person. And we like the boost. But what Dane's not realizing is the Cowboys are about to win the division. So just don't even worry about any of this stuff. It's about to go down because Dwayne Haskins
if that's
is
the
currently...
case, then...
The Cowboys are the ones trying to
Dwayne
trade
Haskins
up.
has been up to.
Are you Captain Trade Up at that point if the Cowboys win the division?
No, we're just gonna do the draft.
Okay,
look, we're just gonna do the draft. Okay, we're gonna watch. Yeah, we're gonna watch the guys, and we're gonna figure this thing out. If trade down is a possibility, it'll be great. Won't have the same value that I once thought it would because the Cowboys are winning games. Mm-hmm. But hey, you're supposed to win the games. That's what it's all about, guys. You're supposed to try your best.
Yeah,
I would never tell them not to try their best.
Good job. I like that, Jeff. Staying positive here. Now, that's one of the interesting things about doing this show a little bit earlier this year than we've done it in the past in terms of the draft show is we get to kind of look at the fluctuation of value. I mean, 2 weeks ago, we were talking about the Cowboys maybe picking third overall. So they're currently sitting at 8th, and a win next week could put them right in the 11, 12, 13, 14 range whenever April comes around. But it also is interesting to look at from an overall draft perspective because we thought through the first 15 weeks of the year that the New York Jets were going to be the first overall pick. And Dane, now we know that is at least in peril. You talk about captain trade down being in peril. The Jets are in peril of having that number 1 pick because they beat the Los Angeles Rams this past week, giving up that first overall pick to the Jacksonville Jaguars. What do you think about that scenario and how that switched around so quickly for Jets fans?
It's fascinating. For the longest time, we just kind of assumed that the Jets would be picking 1. They couldn't win a game. Even when they had the win, like against the Raiders, they found a way to screw it up. So it just seemed like they were destined for that top pick. And in this draft, that's what you want. This is the draft where there is a big-time quarterback prospect staring them in the face with Trevor Lawrence. And with that win, they're now tied with the Jaguars, and the Jaguars have mathematically clinched the tiebreaker. So if both these teams, the Jags and the Jets, lose their final 2 games, then the Jaguars will have that number 1 pick. Trevor Lawrence will be the guy, and the Jets find themselves in an interesting situation where they have to basically put Sam Darnold on their draft board and figure out, okay, are we better off sticking with Darnold and drafting Penei Sewell here, where we could have bookend tackles with Mekhi Becton and Penei Sewell? Do we go Jamar Chase here and we give Sam Darnold a big-time wide receiver that can make plays down the field? So, or maybe they are captain trade down. Maybe they look to move back and because they need more draft picks. They need a lot of help elsewhere. So the Jets, last week it was easy. Trevor Lawrence is the top pick, and you start thinking about what you're going to do with that second first rounder, and then in the second round. Now, wide open options, and it starts. The first step is figuring out Sam Darnold, where he is in relation to these quarterback prospects, and do they feel comfortable moving forward with him as their quarterback?
Where do you put Sam Darnold on this board if you're evaluating him up against these quarterbacks? And Jeff, I want to ask you the same question, but Dane, where do you put Sam, and where does he rank in terms of the Trey Lances, the Zach Wilsons, and the Justin Fields of the world?
It's so tough for us to say. I love Sam Darnold coming out as a prospect, but the Jets have a unique have the information right now. How is Sam doing in meetings? How is he doing in the quarterback film room? How is he doing digesting the playbook and then doing what is asked of him behind the scenes? We just don't have that information, so it is a little tough for those of us on the outside to 100% know where he would stack up with these other quarterbacks. The Jets could look at it and say, you know what, we like Sam, but it's not working, and he needs a change of scenery. We need new life at this position, and they could decide to part ways, and that's just what's best for everybody. Or they could say, you know what, Sam's doing everything that he can. Let's get a new coach in here. Let's see how he does with the new coaching staff. Let's build up the roster around him, and we think we have something. And that's probably the most likely scenario, but who knows? We just don't know what's going on behind the scenes there in New York, and it's tough for Darnold because he has not had the wide receivers, he has not had the offensive line, he has not had the coaching. I know I sound like a Darnold apologist right now, but try winning without at least one or two of those 3 things. It's not going to happen.
Yeah, Dane he's a Sam Darnold homer, and that happens from time to time. When you love a guy. I think it's a fair point that every quarterback has different circumstances when they come into the league. But for me, I think if the Jets, and so many teams call me for my draft advice, if the Jets are one of them, I would say you have 3 years of evidence that he can't play. So we're going to try somebody else. And yeah, he didn't have as nearly as good a shot as guys who go into much better circumstances. But I got 3 years. We're coming towards the end of him being an affordable quarterback. And I got 3 years that says that he's not good. So I would try somebody else. Now, on doing the draft show on Cowboys.com, I would love it if the Jets would just stick and pick Penei Sewell and kind of throw a wrench into things where now what do the Bengals do? And are the quarterbacks going to stretch one more pick, or are people just jumping in more of a hurry to go get a guy? So from a Cowboys perspective, I hope the Jets do pick second, and I hope they do skip quarterback so that those can stretch a little bit and maybe one can be there for you to trade down with. But I would tell the Jets, look, 3 years is 3 years. He's been a bad NFL quarterback. Try somebody else.
So basically what I'm hearing here is Captain Trade Down is not actually off the horse, because you just gave me a scenario where Captain Trade Down's there, and I know things can change and there's a lot that goes into it.
Look,
but
I'm never off the horse, okay?
Okay.
I'm always on the horse.
Okay.
What I am is I'm an emotional person reacting to adversity, okay? The Captain Trade Down hit some adversity this week, lost some value in his pick. And so now Captain Trade Down is sitting here at a crossroads on a gimpy ankle with a bad quad trying to hold on to the horse, and he's wondering, well, now, do we want to chase down this way to 2 wins while Dwayne Haskins is at gentlemen's establishments, maybe about to get suspended, maybe Washington's going to lose 2 games in a row and I'm about to go into the playoffs because I go 2-0, or is Captain Trade Down still trying to lose 2 games? He doesn't know. Captain Trade Down's confused right now.
Okay.
That's all.
Okay, that's it's something that I guess you could look at this point in the draft. But also, I mean, you talk about the Cowboys in a scenario that could work out for him or them, I guess, not him, not Captain Trade Down, but for them, whenever it comes to the Cincinnati Bengals potentially taking a non-quarterback behind the Jets taking a non-quarterback, and it takes those guys off the board. But Jeff, you asked the question in the group me this weekend, or the group text this weekend, that whenever it comes to being in the top 10, there's a lot of pressure on these organizations. And right now the Cowboys currently sit inside that top 10, but you don't want to bust. You want to have those specific needs to fill. But right now, what position do you feel comfortable taking in the top 10, Mr. Kavanaugh? Because right now, I know you said it, I think Dane's on this board, I think I'm on this board as well, but there's a lot of offensive guys you feel comfortable with in the top 10, but you need a defensive player that's going to be a game changer.
Yeah, and I think that's the problem, because for me, and I get a lot of pushback from a lot of Cowboy fans for this, I don't care what you need. I don't care. If I can make it line up with the board better and pick a guy, then that's okay. But if you're picking a defensive player because you need help on defense, you're failing at drafting and you're failing at building your team. If you're picking, I'm just going to pick a random number, if you're picking 8th and your 10 best players on your board are offense, but you reach because you have a position in need, well, enjoy Taco Charlton. I know that's not in the top 10, but you have a top 10 pick. You're supposed to pick the best football player because for a half decade he's going to be yours, and in the top 10, he's also going to make a lot of money in a salary cap league. You don't want to bust on a top 10 pick. If my best player plays a position that I don't, quote, need, I'm going to pick him anyway, and then I'll make my roster work around it. I'll trade. I'll go trade from a position of strength to another team to try to find a player. And we're just throwing out names here, but like Michael Gallup for Juan Thornhill, who's become a rotational free safety in Kansas City. Here, have 1 year of an upgraded Sammy Watkins. I'll take 2 years of an upgrade at free safety for me because I don't have a free safety on the roster. And boom, I picked an offensive player in the first round. It's a half-decade pick that makes a lot of money when you're picking in the top 10. So to me, from the guys I've seen so far in this draft, with all due respect to Micah Parsons and Caleb Farley and Patrick Surtain, I am more confident that Penei Sewell, Rashaan Slater, the Northwestern offensive tackle, Kyle Pitts, the Florida tight end, Jamar Chase, the LSU wide receiver, Devontae Smith, the Alabama wide receiver, and maybe, let me know about his ankle, but Jalen Waddle, the Alabama wide receiver, I'm more convinced that I'm not missing with all of them than any defensive player in this draft. And so that's the unique challenge that I think teams are going to face, because you need a corner, you need a defensive tackle, you need pass rush. I don't care. I'm not picking a worse player on purpose.
Dane, do you agree?
That's absolutely. I think it'd be very foolish to reach on a player in the top 10 because of need. It's not a wise way to build your roster. You need to do. We talk so much about the game of football being a game of attrition. The injuries happen. Guys, the talent for players and their effectiveness goes up and down. At this time last year, we weren't really talking about linebacker as a huge need for this team. But here we are a year later, and it sure looks like a need. And you never know. Now, I'm not saying they should draft a wide receiver, with the way the current roster's set up. But that doesn't mean that you reach for a player that you're not high on. Now, right now they're picking at 8, and I do think that Micah Parsons is in that range, and you have to decide, okay, an off-ball linebacker, can he give you enough where he's worth that selection of a top 10 pick? Are you going to use him enough as an edge rusher? Are you going to use him? I mean, the snaps that he's going to play, is the impact worth a top 10 pick? I think absolutely they could come to that conclusion of Micah Parsons, in one of these corners. Caleb Farley, in most years is not going to be a top 10 pick. He might not be a top 10 pick this year. In this draft, he might be, and it makes it for a. I don't necessarily think that Caleb Farley at 8 would be a reach in this draft. Just the way that the top picks are going to play out, because we just don't have many quote unquote elite players. So if they're in that 8 to 10 to 12 range when they draft, that's right in the range where Parsons and these corners are going to come off the board. So it's not. I don't think it's exactly a reach there. Is it maybe what you're hoping for? Maybe not in normal drafts, but this is the draft. We have to be realistic here. So while I do agree that the best players in this draft are on the offensive side of the ball, where they're picking right now, I think, is where we're not at 4 anymore. We're picking at 8, and so that's when you start to think about Parsons or one of these corners.
What would be the reaction of this fan base, Jeff, whenever you go into, I don't know if Roger Goodell's going to be on a stage or back in his basement in April, because none of us never really know what's going on, especially right now. But when he walks up and gets in front of the camera, he says, Dallas Cowboys with the blank overall pick select this offensive player. What do you think the reaction is going to be from a fan base? Because you already said that you caught some flack from Cowboys fans about picking best player available, and BPA has been something we've preached on this show for a couple years now, but is that something that I think Cowboys fans would accept, or is it something they'd be very frustrated in?
Maybe it depends. I think you could probably sell to the fan base, for instance, Kyle Pitts, the Florida tight end, more than you could sell Jamar Chase or Devontae Smith, because they're receivers, although I call Kyle Pitts a receiver too.
Yeah.
But just the fact that you call him a tight end, I think, would change the way that maybe the fan base could look at it. But you're going to have a lot of people who are just going to be like, no, this defense is bad. This defense is the problem. I can't believe they keep making selections to try to score more points when they can't stop anybody. And I get that. But that's why there's multiple avenues to improving your team. And the top 10, to me, is not one where you're flexible about that. Picking in the top 10, I'm going to pick the best player, then I'm going to look at my roster, then I'm going to figure out how to make the best team and help my defense. There's other rounds in the draft where I'm more willing to go need, just not the first one, and definitely not in the top 10. So yeah, I think a lot of the fan base would kind of freak out on you. They kind of freak out on you, but I'd be okay. We'd talk them off the ledge. We'll fix it. Yeah. We'll make it okay.
Dane,
Jeff, if I told you that Rashaan Slater was the pick at 8, you feeling good about that?
Yeah, I'm fine with that, because I think he's one of my, right now, if you tell me I have a top 8 pick, I have 8 names. I have 8 names that I feel great about in this draft class, and he's one of them.
Are the 8 names?
And he's got a little more.
Go for it, Dane.
He's got a little more proven versatility than a Penei Sewell, where we've been able to see him right side, left side. He can play guard, so he could come in and be to do a lot of things for that offensive line while still being the eventual left tackle whenever Tyron's no longer on the roster.
I think he's a better player than Penei Sewell.
Whoa, you have him above him on his board?
On
your board?
No. No.
Okay.
But I think he's a better player.
Sewell's a better. Sewell's a better prospect and Slater's a better player.
Micah Parsons is a better prospect than Nick Bolton. Nick Bolton's a better player than Micah Parsons. Yep, that's the way I see him.
Okay, that's interesting. I think
like it.
We could dig into
and
that.
And believe me, I think that one might be spicy to people. I think Missouri's Nick Bolton is a better player today than Micah Parsons. I absolutely do.
I kind of don't disagree with you. I like Nick Bolton a lot. I've liked him since he was at Frisco Lone Star down the road playing his high school ball. I've always been a big fan of his. But I think there's always growth to be had on this specific topic, players versus prospects, and we'll talk about that along down the road. But I think whenever it comes to offensive tackle, that would probably be the easiest sell for me if the Cowboys were in the top 8 and they took an offensive tackle, especially if it's a Slater or if it's a Penei Sewell, if he somehow falls due to the opt-out or something unforeseen at the moment. But if it's an offensive tackle, I feel much better about a pick in the top 8 than maybe I would about a wide receiver. Kyle Pitts is on that borderline for me because I think Kyle Pitts, along with CeeDee Lamb, Michael Gallup, and Amari Cooper, would be unbelievable to look at whenever this offense gets back and healthy in 2021. But when we come back here on the Draft Show, we're going to talk about some Twitter on the 20, and maybe we'll bring in a conversation about Micah Parsons and when's the best time to go with an off-ball linebacker. We'll answer that next when we come back on the other side of the break.
There's nothing as unique as our eyes, which is why Essilor pioneers ways to make lenses as unique as you. Verilux for super sharp vision, Essential Blue for protection, and Crizal for freedom from glare. 3 cutting-edge solutions in a single unique lens. So whatever your needs, insist on Essilor. Visit your local Essilor experts and find the perfect lens for you. See more, do more, Essilor.
Since 1865, Stetson hats are American-made with pride right here in Texas. And Stetson is proud to be on the field with America's team. Want to show your Texas and team pride too? You can. By purchasing your own Stetson, you can look just like how the flag guys do on field at every home game. Stetson hats, the official crown of all self-respecting Cowboys, and your favorite football team.
Get yours today at shop.dallascowboys.com or at stetson.com.
I'm Jay Novacek, former tight end for the Dallas Cowboys. Back in the day, I was the guy who always got the tough yards, and that's why I run with John Deere today. In fact, I have a John Deere 3025E tractor that can handle any yard work I need to do, even the tough yards way out back. So if you have 1 acre or 1,000, John Deere has the equipment that's just right for you. Visit a John Deere dealer today and run with us. We are the official tractor provider of your Dallas Cowboys.
Dear, it's 1908. Don't you think we should get electricity?
And stop using candles to see at night.
It's just electricity lights up the room fast. It's more reliable than candles blowing out, and people seem to love it nationwide.
Well, candles are...
Dear, did you just run into the wall?
Nope. May I have a new candle, please?
Historically, switching to new technology is a no-brainer. Today, it's AT&T 5G. Fast, reliable, secure, and nationwide. Switch to AT&T 5G. It's not complicated. 5G requires compatible plan. May not be in your area. See att.com/5G for you for details.
This is the DallasCowboys.com Draft Show.
Second segment here of this edition of the DallasCowboys.com Draft Show. It's episode 4 of the 2021 show. Kyle Yeomans, Dane Brugler, along with Captain Trade Down, a.k.a. Jeff Kavanaugh. Trade down, stick and pick, trade up. It doesn't matter right now. We've got a long way to go until Captain What's-His-Face can make his name be known in April 29th, 2021. But let's go to some Twitter on the 20, shall we?
On the 20.
Chris Beam back in the back with the sounder as always. And we're going to start things off from Fanatic Cowboy. And this is the one I teased going into the break, gentlemen. But what is the best range for an off-ball linebacker in this class? We'll start with Mr. Dane Brugler on this. And, I mean, we talked about Micah Parsons early on. Is there another off-ball linebacker later in the draft, maybe a Nick Bolton, that could potentially scoot their way into the first round? But what's the sweet spot for that position?
I think it's pretty spread out. Like I wouldn't call it a deep position this year, but you have Micah Parsons, who's probably going to be a top 12 pick. Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, who's probably going to be somewhere in the top 20. Zavon Collins, probably somewhere in the top 20. Nick Bolton, I think, will be somewhere in the back half of round 1, and only because I think a lot of teams won't be on board with the lack of length with Bolton. But could we see maybe a Chaz Surratt out of North Carolina sneak into that top 30, top 40 conversation? Absolutely. So this is a draft where I don't think it's a very deep position at linebacker, but every 10 picks or so, there's another linebacker that's kind of worth it. Baron Browning, right there as a borderline top 50 guy out of Ohio State. Jabril Cox out of LSU. He's in that maybe back half of round 2 area. So this is it's a position where I think you're going to have options. You don't have to take a guy early to get a linebacker. You can wait till the second round and still feel pretty good about your options.
Jeff?
I think that is what worries me about Micah Parsons. Because Micah Parsons, excuse me, out of all those guys he's naming, obviously Micah Parsons is the most freak show of an athlete. Mm-hmm. And I'm not saying that he wasn't a very good college player. He's a very good college player. But I think me, as watching him for NFL purposes, I watch him make some risky decisions, like trying to shoot gaps that lead to missed plays and just trying to sort of hero ball it up, and he's not always immediately reading and reacting properly. And then you start watching, there's guys that don't have his physical gifts. And we do this, teams have to do this at every position with every player. But you're weighing like, okay, Micah Parsons' ceiling is way up there somewhere beyond the roof.
Bobby Wagner.
Yeah, but would you feel better picking a guy that you're much more comfortable with his floor when you're talking about an off-the-ball linebacker 40 picks later? I would. And if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But, I mean, that's just kind of where I am with Micah Parsons at this point, is I kind of like a lot of those other guys. And if you told me I could pick my linebacker in the 30s or 40s, that I feel better about the floor than I do with Parsons, I think that would be the range for me.
I like that a lot. I really do. I think there's a lot of guys in there, and I know we just named a bunch of guys, but Jabril Cox is in that conversation for me. Nick Bolton, we've already mentioned. Dane, can you say his name one more time? The Notre Dame linebacker, redshirt junior?
Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah.
Okay. Is that
who actually he just won the Butt Kiss Award for the college football's top linebacker? So it'll be interesting talking or watching him in the college football playoff semifinal against Alabama, against Najee Harris and everything that offense is going to throw at that defense. So Owusu-Koramoah is an explosive guy who is kind of like this year's
Simmons.
Yes, Isaiah Simmons from last year, who just the versatile jack of all trades. You can play him as a blitzer. You can line him up in the slot. You can play him as a traditional off-ball overhang linebacker. You can just do a lot of things with him, and that versatility is the key.
You think he's where do you have him on your board right now? Do you have him up above like a Chaz Surratt at the moment, or where is he sitting at this time?
Yeah, I think he's right positioned to be the second linebacker. I think him, Zavon Collins, they're kind of fighting it out, and I think Nick Bolton, I throw him in there as well as the linebackers fighting to be the second linebacker drafted.
Gotcha. There's a ton of guys there, and that's the thing about this position. Whenever it comes to linebackers, there's some top-heavy names like the Micah Parsons of the world, but there's options later on, and that's kind of what Jeff was talking about a moment ago. Second question here from the Star Vision. He says, who are the top 5 safeties in this draft? And he says he wants to pair somebody with Donovan Wilson. Jeff, who are your top 5 safeties at this moment?
Oh, man. I'm going to preface this with I don't love this safety class. I don't love this safety class so far.
I don't either.
So, interestingly, the best guy I've seen, I have no idea if he's going to be in the draft, and I'm told, and Dane can take us down this road because Dane is the best in the country at this draft stuff. But my favorite guy that I've actually seen on tape was the 2019 tape of the 5'8" safety from TCU, Ardarius Washington. Mm-hmm. And I'm told that 2020 hasn't been going as well for him, and that his teammate Trevon Merrick may be the top safety in this class. I didn't love Merrick on the 19 tape, so this is one of those things where it's December and I haven't seen 2020 stuff yet. But my favorite safeties that I've seen are actually Gillespie at Missouri and Nasiruddin at Florida State, and they're very different. The Florida State guy's like 6'4", 220. He looks like Cam Chancellor. I don't know that he pairs with Donovan Wilson ideally, because I don't think he's going to play center field, but he can play deep half, he can play down. Javon Holland I don't love at Oregon. He's okay. Merrick, his 19 tape is okay. So I defer to Dane and say, tell me about the 2020 and what I'm going to see from some of these guys.
Jeff, let me ask you first. What'd you think of Andre Cisco out of Syracuse?
Yeah.
Andre Cisco is a really popular name that I hear from Cowboy fans because of his 13 career interceptions. I think he probably gave up twice as many touchdowns as he had interceptions. So I'm terrified of Andre Cisco. Like everybody's telling me he runs a 4.3. I'm watching him miss tackles in the open field and then not run down guys who don't run 4.3s. So I don't know if he runs a football 4.3. And so, like, guys who catch the ball in front of him, get around him and beat him to the end zone. I think his awareness to cover deep as a free safety is not good. So I think he's a guy that has great stats, and I'm told he's a great athlete. But on tape, he's going to be one of the guys where I go, if you're talking about picking him in the top 60, 70, 80, I'll let somebody else do it.
All right, Dane, where are you sitting at in this safety class?
Well, I think that a lot of what Jeff was saying I agree with. It's hard to love any of these guys. Maury out of TCU still is my top guy. I think when you look at his range, his ball skills, there's a lot that you can work with there. Javon Holland out of Oregon, he's kind of your prototypical big nickel safety type who I don't love as a first-round pick. I don't know I love him as a top 40 pick. I think he's more of a mid-second type of player. The interesting name here is Shaun Waite out of Ohio State. And it's a projection because this is a guy who played inside corner last year as a nickel, moved him to outside corner this year where I thought he would fit better because of his size, because of his ability to turn and run, and he's just looked lost as an outside corner. So now we have to figure out what to do with him. And he's a big athlete who can tackle, and you just have to figure out from a, read and react standpoint, can he play off and be a safety, a guy that can play the nickel, that can, play single high, do everything you want out of a safety. That's what we have to figure out, because Shaun Waite, to me, is the interesting name in this discussion, where his best position on the field might be lining up as that kind of versatile, do-everything type of safety.
Yeah, and I liked his tape in the slot as well. I think Shaun Waite was better in the slot than he was at any point this season on the outside. And I don't know, maybe we thought the move to the outside would have worked for Waite, but of course it didn't, and he ended up having some issues out there. Maybe the move to safety does the same thing. That's what worries me about Shaun Waite. But Nasiruddin out of Florida State, I mean, that's a guy who's going to be at the Senior Bowl, has already accepted his Senior Bowl invite, and I think that's going to be one of the guys that I have circled all that week of how does he stand up against some of these other players, some of these other these linebackers. And I know it's tough to kind of figure out, safeties, and we're talking safeties here, but it's kind of tough to figure out safeties at a Senior Bowl like that. We tried to do it last year with Kyle Duggar and things like that, but he's one of those guys that I have my eye on. Now, we're going to continue Twitter on the 20, but we're going to go to break because we need to get Jeff Kavanaugh back, having some technical difficulties here. So on the other side of the break, we'll continue talking about some of these extra players and these needs for the Dallas Cowboys here on the DallasCowboys.com Draft Show.
We're back with a tasty treat that's sweeping airwaves and taste buds. It's new Dr. Pepper and Cream Soda. Let's take a listen.
Dr. Pepper and Cream Soda's here. A new combo that's music to my ears, okay. Let's play. Cream Soda and Dr. Pepper time. Pour it in a glass of ice.
Music to my ears and mouth. New Dr. Pepper and Cream Soda.
A delicious duet.
There's nothing as unique as our eyes, which is why Essilor pioneers ways to make lenses as unique as you. Verilux for super sharp vision, Essential Blue for protection, and Crizal for freedom from glare. 3 cutting-edge solutions in a single unique lens. So whatever your needs, insist on Essilor. Visit your local Essilor experts and find the perfect lens for you. See more, do more, Essilor.
The Cowboys way, where 16 Hall of Famers and 5 championships shows us what success looks like. Where turkey is always the second best part of Thanksgiving Day. Where we are all defined by one single thing, the star. Where we as fans know it's our job to keep the tradition going. Bank of America is proud to be the official bank of the Dallas Cowboys and to support the quest of living life the Cowboys way. Copyright 2020, Bank of America Corporation.
Dear, it's 1908. Don't you think we should get electricity?
And stop using candles to see at night.
It's just electricity lights up the room fast. It's more reliable than candles blowing out, and people seem to love it nationwide.
Well, candles are...
Dear, did you just run into the wall?
Nope. May I have a new candle, please?
Historically, switching to new technology is a no-brainer. Today, it's AT&T 5G. Fast, reliable, secure, and nationwide. Switch to AT&T 5G. It's not complicated. 5G requires compatible plan. May not be in your area. See att.com/5G for you for details.
There's nothing as unique as our eyes, which is why Essilor pioneers ways to make lenses as unique as you. Verilux for super sharp vision, Essential Blue for protection, and Crizal for freedom from glare. 3 cutting-edge solutions in a single unique lens. So whatever your needs, insist on Essilor. Visit your local Essilor experts and find the perfect lens for you. See more, do more, Essilor.
Since 1865, Stetson hats are American-made with pride right here in Texas. And Stetson is proud to be on the field with America's team. Want to show your Texas and team pride too? You can. By purchasing your own Stetson, you can look just like how the flag guys do on field at every home game. Stetson hats, the official crown of all self-respecting Cowboys, and your favorite football team.
Get yours today at shop.dallascowboys.com or at stetson.com.
I'm Jay Novacek, former tight end for the Dallas Cowboys. Back in the day, I was the guy who always got the tough yards, and that's why I run with John Deere today. In fact, I have a John Deere 3025E tractor that can handle any yard work I need to do, even the tough yards way out back. So if you have 1 acre or 1,000, John Deere has the equipment that's just right for you. Visit a John Deere dealer today and run with us. We are the official tractor provider of your Dallas Cowboys.
Dear, it's 1908. Don't you think we should get electricity?
And stop using candles to see at night.
It's just electricity lights up the room fast. It's more reliable than candles blowing out, and people seem to love it nationwide.
Well, candles are...
Dear, did you just run into the wall?
Nope. May I have a new candle, please?
Historically, switching to new technology is a no-brainer. Today, it's AT&T 5G. Fast, reliable, secure, and nationwide. Switch to AT&T 5G. It's not complicated. 5G requires compatible plan. May not be in your area. See att.com/5G for you for details.
This is the DallasCowboys.com Draft Show.
Back here on the DallasCowboys.com Draft Show. Still trying to figure some things out with Jeff Cavanaugh, but he is back on, and everyone at home will be able to hear what Captain Trade Down has to say. Kyle Yeomans, Jeff Cavanaugh, along with Dane Brugler. And, you know, it is the giving season. It's the holiday season, and I want to give some names out in terms of guys that we can look at as some potentials down the road. And, Dana, we're going to start with you on this one, but I want to hear your early candidate for a pet cat, somebody who is on the back half of this draft board that could potentially rise, then it could potentially find their way up into the early parts of the draft, or somebody that you just already have fallen in love with in terms of the back half of the 2021 draft.
There's a few. Bowling Green's got a tight end, Quentin Morris, who is not a well-known name. He's a former wide receiver making the move to tight end, bulking up. He's going to be that versatile H-back. He's a really fun player who Quentin Morris is. If you're looking for a tight end somewhere in the mid-rounds, I think he's the guy you need to look at. And then, keeping at wide receiver, this is another deep wide receiver group. I mean, you could really point to a lot of names here that are highly, highly intriguing. Amari Rogers out of Clemson is a guy that grows on me more and more every time I watch him. When you watch him on tape, it feels like your clicker has a rumble pack on it because you feel his hits. You feel the play strength. There's a lot of Deebo Samuel to Amari Rogers, just with the way he plays. He's got that running back body after the catch. He's lined up in the slot, but he can beat you horizontally, vertically. If I'm the Jets or the Jaguars, whoever takes Trevor Lawrence with the first pick, Amari Rogers would be the guy I'd be targeting in, say, the third round to pair those guys back up because he's just a really talented player who I don't think is getting talked about enough. I wouldn't be surprised at all if he ends up being one of the first 10 receivers drafted this year.
Wow. So Amari Rogers, do you have him over Justin Ross out of the Clemson wide receivers, or is Justin Ross still above him on your board?
Well, Justin Ross is a freak, and honestly, he's not on my board right now just because we have no idea what's going on with the medicals. Very, very serious neck issue. So when he's finally cleared, and if he's part of this draft class, then we'll kind of cross that bridge. But it's Amari Rogers is a guy that just. The more you watch him, the more you're just like, this guy just plays, and he can play special teams. He can line up all over the formation. The program there loves him. So just a big fan of Amari Rogers and what he can do for you.
Yeah, both those guys are stout players. Now, Jeff, early candidate for Pet Cat here in December. I know it's way early, but who you got?
Yeah, it's December, man. This is a Dane Brugler special. I guess one of the safeties I named, I guess I would go Tyree Gillespie because he's the name that I haven't heard much. So I'm in on a couple of Missouri defenders. Gillespie's one of them, and of course Nick Bolton is of course my pet cat at the linebacker there. But their safety has 0 career picks, 0. And I'm sitting there watching him play free safety, and I'm watching him cover Kyle Pitts, and I'm watching him, and I'm like, that guy looks like a starting NFL safety. And I'm watching all the other guys that are considered better prospects, and I'm like, I don't trust any of these guys. And I do trust the guy who has 0 career picks. So that's the way the world works sometimes. So I'll go Tyree Gillespie, Missouri safety.
And Tyree Gillespie is a guy who I watched a little bit of because I was watching Bolton and I was watching one of the other Missouri safeties and Bledsoe that has already accepted his Senior Bowl invite. But whenever it comes to Gillespie, Dane, where does he sit on your board? Because I think with Missouri, there's a lot of these guys, like Jeff just said, that are pretty much they're the players, but not necessarily the prospects that you're looking at.
Yeah, no, I'm a big Gillespie fan. Nasruddin and then Gillespie, the top 2 senior safeties for me this year. I think you guys think pretty similar in that regard. Gillespie, he's a guy that his effort out there is fantastic, both on defense and special teams. He times his hits well. He'll separate man from ball. The range that he shows, his ability to see it and go. He's not overthinking things out there, and then he'll drive through his target as a tackler and as a blitzer. So the way he'll explode into contact. He gives as good as he gets. So Tyree Gillespie, big fan in this draft, and if he's available, I don't know that he's going to sneak into the top 100. So if he's available to me at the top half of the 4th round, that's an easy pick for me.
Okay, so final question here before we run out of time, because Derek's going to come downstairs and kick us out of this podcast studio. But 3 most likely players to be drafted by the Dallas Cowboys. Once again, Jeff, I know it's super early, and I know it's super, super early. And you guys can say the same players, but we'll start with Dane. Top 3 players to be picked by the Dallas Cowboys as we sit at this moment.
First round, right?
First round, guys, yes. Just to make it easy, we don't need to go later in the draft.
Right. And I'll say 3 different positions just to keep it spicy.
Okay.
Let's go with Caleb Farley, the Virginia Tech corner, who 6'2", 205 is going to run a 4.4. His best football is still ahead of him. Big fan of Farley. Micah Parsons, the linebacker out of Penn State, who can give you rush help. He's just a big time athlete. You draft him top 10 with the hopes that he becomes Bobby Wagner. Mm-hmm. And then for a third, Let's say Kyle Pitts. I know it just seems like why not make a strength even more of a strength? Why not? Add him because he can block. Like he's not going to drive defenders off the ball, but he can get in the way. He can do his job, and so you can use him in line. But the reason you draft him that high is because what he can do down the field. If you have your 3 receivers out there plus Pitts running down the seam, good luck for any defense trying to cover that.
Team 50 Burger is alive and well. All right, Jeff, who are your 3 guys?
Why not?
Well, I probably like Dane's 3 better than my 3 because I pretty much agree with his 3. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to change out 1.
Okay.
Because I'm more interested in being right than giving you other names. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to go Micah Parsons.
Okay.
I'm going to go Caleb Farley. And instead of Pitts, I'm either going to go Rashaan Slater or I'm going to go Patrick Surtain.
Pick one of them.
I'll go Slater. Go Slater. Farley, Parsons, Rashaan Slater. Offensive line, linebacker, corner.
Okay. I'm interested. I know we're out of time, but I'm going to ask this anyways because I can do this. But whenever it comes to Surtain and Farley, I know there's still a long way to go, but we talked about this in the break. But why do you guys both have Farley over Surtain? Because I know a lot of people have it flip-flop the other way, including myself. I like Surtain better than Farley right now, but I want to know why you guys have Farley on top.
The more I see of Surtain, the more what I don't trust him to do is be a guy that's going to shadow a team's number 1 wide receiver. And I think Caleb Farley absolutely has a chance to be that guy. I think Caleb Farley's athleticism gives him an opportunity for you to say, hey, this week we are playing against, I'm just trying to think of random teams and their number 1 receivers. Hey, we got Tyree Hill. Good luck, guys. I think Farley's got a chance and Surtain's dead in the water. And then next week, if it's a big receiver, no problem. I think Surtain is probably more scheme and matchup dependent. And the more I've seen of him, the more I actually do see him getting called for some PIs as well. So I like Surtain as being a starting NFL cornerback for a long time. I like Farley's potential to be a star.
Dane, do you agree that the potential to be a star for Farley is much better and much higher than Patrick Surtain? And then also the penalties being an issue for Surtain out there?
Yeah, I mean, I do. And I mean, look, with Surtain, you have a guy that's very polished. I mean, he does a nice job staying in phase, and he's smooth, instinctive. The game seems to slow down for him a little bit. At the corner position, I just want a more sudden player, and that's what it comes down to for me. That's the difference is, with Farley, you got a guy with a little more juice. His ability, he also has instincts. He also has, a lot of the things that you look for at the corner, but his reaction skills and the movements are what really shine. And so the ceiling, I think, is much higher for Surtain, or over Surtain for Farley, and that's why he's my number 1 corner at this moment.
I think the opt-out scares me with Farley, and maybe that's the case, but I like what I've seen from the 2020 tape of Surtain more so than what I liked from 2019 Farley, but I really wish Farley would have had a 2020. I feel like I would feel much differently if Farley had a 2020 season to go off of. But this will be a debate that continues to rage on. I may even ask this with the other group of guys and see how they fare with both of them and where they stand right now before we really get into the rest of this draft process. But that's going to do it here for us on the Draft Show. By the way, I joked about Derek hopping down and kicking us out. He legitimately just walked into the studio and set his stuff down. So, yeah, I kind of do have to get out of here now at this point. But that'll do it
Derek.
for us.
Nice to see you.
Jeff says hi. So, for KT, unfortunately not with us. He'll be back after the turn of the new year. But for Dane Brugler, for Jeff Kavanaugh, I'm Kyle Yeoman saying so long. Thanks for joining us here on the DallasCowboys.com Draft Show.
This has been a production of DallasCowboys.com and the Dallas Cowboys Football Club.
How about this?